teeny weeny robots is all we're talking about today, and nanobots. So in this week's Future Talk with Shara Evans and Liz Buchanan, we are talking nanobots. So what is exciting in the world of nanobots, Shara?
Oh my gosh. Don't get me started, Liz. You know how much I like talking about robots.
You're just a little bit of a geek, just a little bit.
Oh, tiny weeny bit.
Tiny bit.
But when we're talking about nanobots, what we're talking about are robots that are microscopic. I mean, they are literally, if you took one of the hairs on my head, they'd be just a fraction of one hair on somebody's head. That's how tiny they are. And we're talking about using these for precision medicine. And that's what's really exciting, especially when we think about the things that are happening in the world around us. So just as a little background, with coronavirus and any virus in general, what we're talking about are structures that get into our body that are microscopic. And that's why they're so hard to treat, is that literally you almost can't see them without very high power microscopes. And that makes it very difficult to find drug combinations to be able to attack these things. And it's funny, they're not really alive, but they quote live in us anyway. It reminds me sort of like Schrodinger's cat, Liz. Where is it alive or is it dead or is it both? But irrespective, viruses of any type are not good for humans, or in many cases animals, but we serve as really good hosts for them. So what's super exciting about nanobots is that they have been under investigation by a lot of research labs around the world for quite a while now. And they have the capacity, because they're so teeny tiny, to be able to do really targeted medical intervention. So let me give you an example to make this real of a real nanobot experiment that is a collaboration from the Nanoscience Institute in China and Arizona State University, that they published a paper in 2018 where they had been using nanobots to start fighting cancers. Initially, the experiments were with mice. So I'm just going to show a screenshot, which is a graphic illustration. That's not the real nanobot that they're using, but I just want to show something interesting, and then we'll talk a little bit about what they're doing. So let me share my screen. What you can see is this blue area. It looks like a little tiny virus, and again, this is just an artist illustration. It's not the real nanobot. And you can see how these little tiny robots can start attacking things that are microscopic and small. So that's just the artist illustration. But what's interesting about the experiment that was done in China, and it's part of ongoing research, and it's happening in a lot of labs around the world. But in this particular instance, they designed a nanobot that is able to target a specific type of cancer using DNA rolled up into a tube and then coated with a protein that binds with a specific type of cancer. So it gets injected through, a hypodermic needle. In this case, it was done with a mouse, not with a person. And when it gets to where there's this particular type of cancer cell, the protein that it's coated with causes this little nanobot to unfurl and inject a drug right into the cancer cell and literally stop the blood from flowing into the cancer cell, so that it's making that cancer tumor shrink and eventually disappear. So what we're talking about is targeted precision medicine, which I think is super exciting. What about you?
Yeah, it's super excited. I can see that there'll be people who are up in arms about injecting little things and, you know, what else are they injecting into us? But for cancer treatments where it can be really invasive, where this is really targeted, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, because what happens with cancer treatment in particular is that, let's say you're, going through chemotherapy or something else, it's actually impacting your entire body. It's not just attacking the cancer cells. So now let's extrapolate this into what's happening with coronavirus. So with coronavirus, like all viruses, these are teeny little microscopic organisms, for lack of a better word. Yeah. And to combat something that's teeny tiny, guess what? The best way of doing it, in my personal opinion, not being a medical professional, but as a technology futurist who looks at all the medical stuff in great detail, I think that a nanobot targeted with the code for coronavirus could actually be the ultimate answer for defeating this disease and others like it once and for all. And because it's targeted for a specific type of illness, rather than just, in your body generically doing stuff, the chances of something going really wrong are a lot less than if it were a more generic version, which probably will happen in the 10 to 20 year time frame. And my idea might sound kind of crazy, but I'm not the only one thinking of it. I was actually doing a little bit of research, as I do, and it turns out that there are some researchers in Japan who have come up with the same conclusion that I have, that designing nanobots and targeting them to coronavirus might actually be a really, really good thing. Now, they are in the early stages of investigation, and I haven't had a chance to delve into detail about what they're doing. But what this shows is that this is something that could actually be a real long-term cure to wipe this pandemic completely off the face of the planet once and for all. And once we do it with one disease, it might be coronavirus, cancer, you name it.
Yep.
We can start using these little tiny devices to start targeting really specific diseases. And then eventually, as we get more and more accustomed to working with these teeny, teeny, tiny robots, they might be living in our body, acting as defenders for our system and looking for the first signs of illness.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some huge advances, that's for sure. There's an element that we need to keep up with, ethics and so forth, and who has control and what are we giving, what are we putting in our body, but huge growth in medical advancements.
Yeah,
I can see.
You're absolutely right. But if you think about vaccines that are being pushed through to market very, very quickly, again, we're also taking some risks by trying to come up with cures in a very, very rapid manner. And unfortunately, the cure, from what I've been hearing from the American Medical Association over the last few days, actually requires 2 injections of the coronavirus vaccines that are being discussed in America. And that, unfortunately, part of this process is the first day or so after you get the injection, you're not feeling so good. Like you've actually got a mild dose of this, and you can get really bad chills and fever and headaches. And you need to get 2 doses. And if people get put off by not feeling well after the first dose, they might not take the second one. Whereas something like a really targeted nanobot, you wouldn't get this kind of side effect. At least I don't think so.
Absolutely. It's certainly some food for thought, but guess what? We've run out of time.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's always so much fun chatting with you, and thanks everybody.